right, today we're talking about a man who, you could say, stood between Europe and total darkness, Winston Churchill. But we're not just going to rehash the legend. No, we're going to go deeper to find the real, flawed guy whose character was maybe his greatest weapon. And to do that, we're going to use three amazing films as our guide to peel back the layers of the myth.
And right there, that's the heart of it, isn't it? This huge paradox. Here's a guy who suffered from what he called his black dog, his depression, who had an explosive temper, loved his cigars, and yet he's the one who saved the world. His life is just this incredible lesson in how someone who is deeply imperfect can become the voice everyone turns to when things get really, really bad. So let's start with this idea of the imperfect hero, because Churchill was, well, he was anything but polished. And the films we're looking at, they don't try to hide it. They show him for who he was: stubborn, difficult, full of flaws. Which, and this is the key, is exactly what made him so damn necessary at the time.
I mean, just look at this list. You've got this explosive character, the cigar habit, the depression, right next to author of brilliant speeches and savior of a continent. All of that in one person. It's a walking contradiction, right? The brilliant speaker who is fighting his own demons, the guy who's saved Europe but could be an absolute nightmare to work with. And it's in that messy, complicated mix where you find his real strength.
Okay, so let's jump into our first film. This one captures Churchill at maybe the most critical moment of his entire life. We're talking about when Britain was completely, utterly alone against the darkness. And the movie that shows this so well is Darkest Hour.
Just picture it. It's May 1940, and the situation it's a catastrophe. The Nazi war machine has just ripped through Europe. There's basically no one left to fight. The entire world is just holding its breath, and Great Britain is teetering on the edge of collapse. And when I say dire, I mean it. France is collapsed. Belgium is giving up. The entire British army, over 300,000 men, are trapped on a beach at Dunkirk. And back in London, panic is starting to set in. You've got half the government, key people, pushing him for peace talks with Hitler, which was really just a nice way of saying surrender.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, you have Churchill, just flat out refusing to even consider it. When he told his cabinet, never, never, never give up, that wasn't just a nice speech. It was a defiant roar from a man who understood a very simple, terrifying truth. If Britain goes down, the whole world goes down with it. And he was pretty much alone in believing that.
So, in the end, in that moment of total crisis, army trapped, allies gone, government wavering, Churchill's own stubborn, bull-headed character, that became the only real weapon Britain had left. It was literally his will versus the collapse of Western civilization. But the war against Germany, that wasn't the only battle he was fighting. Not by a long shot. Next, we're going to look at the psychological war, the battle that was raging inside the lion himself. And we'll see that through two other really fascinating films.
So these two films, they give us completely different windows into his mind. On one hand, you've got the 2017 movie Churchill. That one's set right before D-Day, and it shows him just haunted by his past failures, especially the disaster at the Dardanelles in World War I. Then you have Into the Storm, which is a much quieter, more psychological look at the incredible burden of command. The weight of knowing every decision you make is going to cost lives.
That movie, Churchill, is so powerful because it's not really about a big epic battle. It's about the private tragedy of an old lion. I mean, he's already a living legend by this point, but he's terrified that D-Day is just going to be another bloodbath, another Dardanelles. He's fighting with his own generals, trying to hang on to control, because deep down, he feels like the war and history itself is moving on without him.
Now, all this immense pressure, it didn't exist in a vacuum, right? To really get the guy who was carrying all that weight, we have to look past the monument and see the little human details. The quirks that made him a real, living, breathing, and sometimes very odd person. Okay, let's start with a fact that surprises a lot of people. He won the Nobel Prize, but not the Peace Prize. Nope, he won it for literature, for his incredible history books and his powerful speeches. This guy wasn't just a politician, he was a master storyteller. And then there's this, and it's just a beautiful irony. The man who guided his country through its darkest hour was literally afraid of the dark. How's that for a humanizing detail? It's just such a stark contrast to that public image of unbreakable courage.
Oh, and the weird quirks? They do not stop there. He hated elevators, insisted on taking the stairs even in his 60s. His poodle, a little guy named Rufus, would often just sit in on cabinet meetings. He was known to show up to a late-night war strategy session in his nightgown. And all of this was fueled by a pretty legendary daily diet of champagne, cognac, and whiskey. Yet his iron will never seemed to break.
So, okay, we've looked at the crisis, we've looked at his inner battles, and we've looked at his personal quirks. So what does Churchillian character actually mean? It's not about being some perfect hero. It's something else entirely.
For me, I think it really boils down to three things. Number one, the ability to stand up straight when the entire world around you is collapsing. Number two, having the guts to say no when everyone else is whispering yes to the easy way out. And number three, and this one's my favorite, the ability to crack a joke when you don't even have the strength left to smile.
And that's really the heart of it all. Churchillian character isn't about being flawless. It's not about being without fear or weakness. It's about psychological resilience. It's the ability to function, to lead, and to inspire in spite of all those things. It's about standing up when everyone else would have sat down. Which, of course, brings us to a final thought. When you look at this complex, contradictory, deeply flawed man who, against all odds, saved the world, you have to ask yourself a question about today. In our own crazy, turbulent times, do we still need leaders like this? Leaders who aren't perfect, but are just unbelievably resilient? I'll leave you to chew on that one. Thanks for joining me for this.